Fantastic. We're going to do a kidneys and urinary bladder series this morning. And we are going to start. We're going to start in reclining butterfly. So come to about the middle of your yoga mat. Let your heels be about 2 hands length away from your groin, and then come back onto your elbows. I like to shimmy my elbows a little closer so it pops my chest up more, and then drop your head back. Take a nice full inhale, and with your exhale, just sigh out. Let your head hang. Let your knees be heavy. And just take a couple moments to just notice how you're showing up on your yoga mat today. Notice if you remember any of your dreams or a feeling that you woke up with. Then allow your breath to help you check in to see how your thinking is this morning. Take a couple of moments and just notice where your heart is at. And then take a couple of moments and notice how your physical body is doing today. Allow your elbows to slide out to the side. If you're not already lying back all the way down, lie all the way down. And bring one hand to your belly, one hand to your heart. Now, if you had another hand, I'd have you bring it to your head. But we only have 2 hands this morning. But if you want to mix it up and put one hand on top of your head and one on your belly, and then switch them later, you're more than welcome to. So as I said, we're focusing on the kidneys and the urinary bladder series, or those meridians and organs this morning. And with the kidneys, they're often very much related to the beginning of something. And their element is water. Esoterically, the kidneys are connected to the planet Venus. And surprisingly, even though it's a water element, and maybe this is just my own bias, but I always think of water as like cool, chill. Though we know, of course, steam and boiling water is just really hot. So there's no real rationale for that. But Venus, the planet, is actually the hottest planet. And part of that is because it has this reflective covering, or atmospheric blanket, you could say. And so just in that imagination, Venus as having this reflective surface, I think it's such a nice combination with how it goes, like, Venus and Aphrodite and the goddesses of love. And they have this quality that they're able to reflect back. And so this is so much part of most love stories, that not only do you fall in love with a person, but they reflect you back to you. So you actually get to know kind of a new, often more beautiful version of yourself. Now bring your hands together, lift up your feet, and then feel a little abdominal work as you try to dive your hands through your feet and come into forward bending butterfly. So theoretically, your heels are still about one hand's length away from your groin. Your head is dropping down to your feet. And you can even imagine, if your head's not quite there yet, on the bottom of your feet, you have this, on each side, you have the arch of your foot. And it makes for this really nice rounded kind of landing surface for when your head does come all the way down there. Notice if your tongue can relax, your elbows can be heavy, and even let your belly relax here. So in this kind of reflective quality of Venus, in that mood, it's not a quote, but it's not verbatim, but Anais Nin, she talked about how we don't see things as they are, but we actually see things as we are, that there's no escaping looking out of the world through our own gaze, through our own biases, through our own membranes and eyes and preferences and understandings. And in art, there is this adage that especially an amateur artist, one who does it just for fun or for the love of it, that when they do portraits, that there's always some level of self-portrait in the portrait they do of anyone. And very popular is also this idea, as soon as you fault something in someone else, that actually you share the same things you criticize in others, you share it with them. So these are all small little examples of a much bigger phenomena. where we are experiencing our life and our world rich and like decorated and filtered through how we believe, think, and fear what our world is. Our brain has very elegant systems for this, actually, where the things we pay attention to will notice more. With your next inhale, roll up. Spread your wings. So moving from butterfly to dragonfly. You're still flying. And we're going to start by coming down the center here. So for some people, they're bendy and open. They can just lie right down. Other people, maybe not so much this morning. And Florian, if you want to sit on a pillow or a stack of books, that can always help your pelvis tilt forward. Yes, see, the book will liberate you. And then roll down. So maybe your chin is coming to your chest, and that's your edge, which is fantastic. That's right, Nola. Or maybe you can come a little further down and come bring your elbows down to the ground. Or maybe you're just relaxing on the ground and taking a little nap. But wherever you are, I want you to just make peace with that spot. And even in yourself, you can try out a little like mantra-like quality where this is the perfect spot for you. We're so often looking for the next spot, wishing we're a little bit more so or a little bit more so. And it's actually becoming it's a very useful practice to keep this reminder going. I'm in the right place at the right time with the right people, even if it doesn't feel that way. But as I was saying, these systems we have, whether it's like our neurochemistry and the RATS system, where they've studied how what we pay attention to is what we notice, or whether it is much more of a bigger cosmology. And the idea of samsara is very much the same, that we, project this illusionary world. And it comes all from, sorry to the Buddhists if that was an inelegant definition, but the basic bones is that, the whole world is illusion, and that we are part of holding up that illusion, one could say. Notice if you're holding back, maybe your elbows can be heavier, your tongue more relaxed. Really notice if you can become passive enough in your body to feel the tug of gravity. We also have very similar theories in psychology. Both pop psychology and more intellectual, contemplated psychology. But how we are is how we meet the world and how the world meets us. Start to roll up. You can flex your feet here And bring your hands mid-thigh and just lift up if you'd like. Just do a little yang moment. It might just be like lifting a cheek or just having an exertion moment. And then keep your legs nice and wide. Yay! And turn a couple of times, dancing your Flimit New Year's dance, however you want to do it. Look, I got sparkles. And end over your right leg and then bow down over your right leg. We also hear this kind of adage of like, you can't change other people, all you can change is yourself. And if it's too intense, Florian, you can actually bend your opposite leg. So if you're bowing over your right leg, it might be a little bit easier if you bend your left knee and let your head hang. Yeah. And then we have this great, the golden mean, this idea that we're supposed to treat others like we want to be treated, which is a little archaic. And at least in the social work realm here in Sweden, there's a lot of debate of actually you treat people like they want to be treated. Revolutionary. Notice where you're shying away from the stretch and where you're surrendering to it. And you notice that surrender often takes a little bit more concentration, a little bit more effort. To really leave room for grace. And then inhale up and do a little interpretive modern dance, whatever you need. Twisting your belly over your left leg. It's nice doing the yawn dance instead of the white man's overbite dance. And then bow over your beautiful left leg, maybe this time folding your right knee in. But in your becoming, I'm sure that you have had moments where, because of a transformation you've gone through, the whole world appears different. Because of a new choice you've made or become. Now, if we just think about things that transform and change, if you're a kid of the 80s, you're maybe thinking of More Than Meets the Eye, Transformers. Maybe you're not a kid of the 80s. We know that some transformations are a product of choice and fiery, anvil pounding effort. While other transformations seem like they've been thrusted upon you or really taken from you, revealing a new place to be, a new way to be. Notice if you can soften in the last 5 breaths here. We have transformations that don't feel like choices at all. Like, I mean, like puberty, right? And then rise up and do whatever you need. Maybe you want to bounce your legs around. Maybe you want to massage your legs. Just give yourself a hug and then find your way. That's a nice example pair, a nice transition moment. And then find your way slowly to Sphinx. Oh, the crowd in here seems surprised. I think nearly every series has Sphinx in it, but particularly for the kidneys, y'all, should be no surprise. We call it Sphinx. We could easily call it, the kidney squeezer. It doesn't have the same romantic ring or mythological references. You want to maybe let your elbows be in front of your shoulders. If your head's too heavy today, you're welcome to hold it. Take your legs as wide as the yoga mat. And then settle in, like I often imagine, you may have your own imagination about what happens when you come into a yin pose. But I often think of it as like, imagine we're full of water and sand and we're kind of shaking up as we move. And as we come into a yin pose, you can kind of feel like the precipitate of the sand coming down towards gravity. We don't have sand in our body, but we have these, like, we do have particulates and like the metals and there's so much different stuff in our bodies. It's awesome, but of different weights too. So if you have a fluid system that comes to rest, the different weights will just naturally settle out of the solution. It's also kind of a similar analogy to why we want to have healthy movement in our bodies, because moving water is the most purified and healthy water. But for a moment here, it's like the river gets still, the lake gets still for a while. And you want to allow your surface to become still. And maybe you think of your skin, or maybe you think even of your muscles as part of the surface. And we have experience of how that surface then works. If you think of a lake or a river, and you have a windless day and it's still, you can really see way down into the depths, seeing the different pebbles and rocks or shells on the bottom, seeing different life moving through the liquid. But it has also this amazing quality. Out of the stillness, there is this reflective surface that's created. I mean, one of our first images in story of Narcissus is looking in the pool of water. Like, wow, you're so gorgeous. At their own reflection. But so there is this reflective quality that comes from being still. Think about this effort that it takes to create that quality in yourself of stillness, of transparency, as being qualities that we can imbue so that we can help others by being reflective to them of who they are. Take 10 more full deep breaths here. After your 10th breath, lowering yourself down to the mat with groans and moans and wiggles and maybe giggles if you're uncomfortable. Whatever works for you, maybe softly crying, but the movement in your body helps your sensations move and transform. And then if you're shaking your legs, let them come to stillness. And then you're going to take your hands underneath your shoulders, push back onto your knees, and you're going to stay on your left knee and you're going to reach your right leg forward. So we're coming into half splits, either preparatory pose where you're standing on your left knee, you can put something underneath it, and you want to pull your right hip back and you're stretching your hamstring this way. If you have Hanumanasana in your practice, you can stretch your legs long. Even if you're holding yourself up a little bit here is okay. But if you're not anywhere close to that, it's probably more or less annoying to be in this pose. It might not be more enjoyable, but it could be. Let your head bow towards your knee. I'll make sure I don't keep you there too long. Breathe into the tight places. And we're still practicing this in the yin way. So we're not forcing anything. We're trying to create the situation for something to occur. Two very different attitudes. So one of the, I was going to say, one of the rants that I commonly go on is we're in the time and age where we hear again and again, like the future is female, we need yin, patriarchy's dying, all such cute little memes. But what this brings to the surface is how little we are familiar with the feminine and the yin as a way of doing anything. So we've lived in a day and age where women have risen to some positions of power, albeit with half the pay, and have become on paper much more equals. But we're still very unpracticed at celebrating things that are deemed as women's work or celebrating women where they act more like women. We're very good at celebrating women when they act like men. Ugh. I said a little, ugh. All right. Now, if you're in Hanumanasana, maybe you can just take your hands down and come all the way into downward facing dog, shooting your leg up. Maybe that's not in your practice. However you want to come out of it, come out of this pose, wiggle around a little bit, maybe moving into downward facing dog just as a cleanser, a rinser. Yeah, a little cat butt in your face. That can also do it for some people. And then stretch your left leg forward. So coming into either to half splits, Hanumanasana, named after the monkey god, jumping from island to island to rescue the princess. But we're not talking about the male gods, we're talking about the princesses today. Princess I? No, I'm just kidding. And then without fear, come into this side, this version of half splits preparation pose, or half splits. Trying to make peace and be soft with the effort and the challenge, and where there is a feeling of conflict in your body. So in this theme of Venus and the kidneys, they're referred to really as the seat of life. And they're attributed with our yin and yang being balanced in our whole body, our whole being, all of our organs, and our life. The kidneys are ruled by water, but as nature is, if something is ruled by water, they have a very intimate relationship to the opposite. So they have a very intimate relationship with fire. So again, this reiteration of a balance between yin and yang. You're got a little bit more to go on this side. And in traditional Chinese medicine, the kidneys include our adrenals. I always like to mention they sit like little hats on top of it, like they're like the party hats of the kidneys. So they sit on top of the kidneys. But the adrenals are our system where we respond with fight, flight, or freeze. There's also a more elegant version where it's fight, flight, freeze, integrate, or rebel. But the kidneys also in traditional Chinese medicine include the ovaries and the testes. In our Western trained mind, it seems quite crazy to be like, oh yeah, my kidneys, I mean my ovaries. Like as we're referring to the same system. But when we study this further, our Western mind even gets appeased. Okay, this side's done now too. Move out of it with grace, with lapis, whatever you're moving it out with. Wiggle it around, move, make some weird sounds. Notice how your sounding and your movement changes the feeling in you. And then bring your knees down to the ground, cross your ankles, and roll over your crossed ankles, coming into caterpillar pose. Again, you might need books underneath your butt. That's how useful they are these days. We need to work on self-knowledge, not so much book knowledge, but they're good for some things. And then lift up tall and start to pour yourself over your legs. See how much you can soften. Nice one. It's really great. Isabel has black pants on and a black kitty cat that's kind of sleeping in between the pose of her yoga legs here, yoga pants legs, but then all of a sudden he'll open the eyes. So it's like she has these scary cat eyes peeking out. Sorry, I get distracted. Oh, look at the fluffy bunny. Take a full breath in, and with your exhale, just sigh out. And notice how your body responds. So for those of, I think most of you know, maybe Florian, maybe Astrid don't know, but my dad's a priest. And so I grew up with lots of, maybe less than you would imagine, but lots of stories and, you know, a worldview through a Christian, esoteric Christian view of the world. Now, esoteric Christianity is markedly different from our mainstream, typically right-wing picture of a Christian church. And there's lots of markers, which is a separate conversation I could go into. But one of the, it was a couple of years ago, I was talking with my dad about reading things about the feminine, and this was there. And he was giving a talk, and he told me the story of Adam and Eve in a way that I hadn't heard it before. I mean, we hear from the Bible, like, oh yeah, I made this guy and then took out his rib, and from that little piece of him made a woman. And it can really incite anger and frustration in women. Like, we're not just some afterthought, some companion for the other. But if we treat this language like symbolic language, that it is, the idea of creating woman after man from something on the inside of him was much more salient. So this picture was, and the Bible kind of talks in pictures around this, that woman was created for man so that he could experience his inner nature. This wasn't new to me. I'd heard this part of the story before, but then my dad went on to go explain how this is the quality especially lifted up in the virgin. Now, as a progressive woman, you know, as soon as like old white guy starts talking about the virgin, all my kind of hackles raised up, and I was like a little bit like on full alert, like, what's he gonna say next? And I had so many reactions in my body, in my thinking, that it actually took me a while to hear what he then said. And he goes on to say, this virgin picture has nothing to do with whether or not the hymen's broken. It has much more to do on this purity of being, of soul. And he goes on to describe it very similar to how we describe the planet Venus, that this virginal state is much more, you know, it's not a question of sexuality. It's a question of being so still and quiet in yourself that others can see their reflection of themselves in you. So it goes back again to this, you know, how we see the Venus planet with its reflective cloud covering, or how we imagine a still lake that has incredible depth, richness, supports life, even when it's quiet and unforced or unagitated. Start to roll up. Bend your knees, and then roll down, and then roll onto your right hand side. Bring your hand underneath your head. We're going like into pulling the cat's tail, and you're going to stretch your top leg straight out from your hip. You might have to negotiate with your neighbors. Little gentle butt kicking. Okay. And then maybe you can reach down and grab onto your lower leg and pull your right heel to your right buttocks. And this might be plenty for you. Or maybe you want to relax your shoulders down to the ground, coming deeper into the twist. Oops. Now, it was also very interesting to have this experience of hearing something and having so much reaction to it and issue with it, and then allowing the idea to really sink in and land in me in a way that I find actually revolutionary and progressive. Maybe I haven't given it justice, but there is no element of this quality of virgin being sexually tied. There's no element of meaning that the woman is, lower than the man. There's none of this. It's really even saying that man doesn't know himself by himself. He can only know himself with woman. But we want to, as we live in an age where all of these gender identities and names and being, where we've been so sensitive to it, but we don't want our sensitivity to stop our further digestion and contemplation of these things. So really taking it back up into a picture life, into symbolic language. Now, that was an example of one of the ways at which we misinterpret a lot of what our histories have perverted, and that we are so still unfamiliar at exploring the feminine, the yin, the symbolic woman, the feminine in each one of us. And this picture of becoming still is very much touches on a new capacity, or naming a capacity we've had, but in a new way. So the kidneys are always, in traditional Chinese medicine, connected to our willpower. And in symbolic language, so is the ox. So we're stepping into this new year of the ox, and it's about preservation and patience and humility and work. It's like just doing the work and we will be rewarded, is kind of the idea. But the bull, the ox, in symbolic language is always connected to will. And you can nearly think of it like, imagine a bull like head down, just pushing forward, no matter what the obstacles. Now roll back to center. And then do the other side. And so one of the cool things about the traditional Chinese medicine, when they talk about will and the kidneys, is that they don't just talk about this kind of bullheaded, power-pushing will. They also talk about yin will. So you all look beautiful in the postures. You really want to make sure your top leg is as high as your hip. You can even put your pillow there to help your leg from sliding down. Take a full breath in, and with your exhale, just sigh out. So they talk about yang will, which we're all very well versed on, this attitude of like, I have to go to work even though I don't want to. I have to push. I have to have the discipline to force myself to do it. Or it's all pictures of power, and not of being empowered, but of exerting power. I've gone on this rant before, like, there's this adage of where there's a will, there's a way, which when applied with just a yang understanding of will, that's how we got to like colonialism, rape and pillage as a form of progress, We can go on. But we need to lift up this yin will. And in ancient traditional Chinese books, they talk about how this yin will can be mostly observed when we are reflecting upon our life. That we may have a strong willpower and be stomping through our biography, trying to make things work our way and walking to the beat of our own drummer and being, a freaking entrepreneur. Like boom, boom, boom. But when we invite in this concept of yin will, oh wait, I need to finish the other sentence first. So we have this picture of the will being like boom, boom. We're going to force it through. We're going to get what we want. We're going to do what we want. It's my right. All of this like privileged kind of patriarchal shadows. But the yin will is what we see is persistent in our biography despite our design. So we may have made like all of these really correct choices and we're doing the right thing. But there's something in our being that has brought us again and again to the same type of relationship or the same type of conflict, in intimacy or work. And we find ourselves being pushed up against the same scenario until something changes. So this yin will is what keeps pushing forward certain patterns in our life until we're awake enough in those patterns to make a different choice. So the yin will is something that we need to observe rather than manipulate and force. And we can imagine the yin will is the same quality of effort that it takes a body of water to come into stillness. This quality of being clear in yourself in such a way that the other human beings can encounter you and in your relationship with them as a gift, as a way to know themselves better. These ancient Chinese books, they go on to say that it is truly when we're able to bring together our yin will and our yang will with the same kind of goal or state of being in mind, that is when we embody wisdom. So we can't just have this force will, where there's a will, there's a way, I'm going to conquer till I'm the only one. But we also can't just have this yin will of like, oh, I see that pattern, and then not doing anything about it. So we can see how when we marry these two together, it actually empowers and transforms both sides of our will to truly be our human will. And as Per let me know, it's the year of the female metal ox. So we want to figure out, how do we invite both sides of our will into this new year? So roll back onto your back, moan and groan, wiggle and cry, whatever you need. And we're going to have a shavasana to let our practice sink in. Do you want a blanket? I have that one, works too. Let the ground help you be still and virginal. Allow your attention to stay in the room, in your body. With your next inhale, invite your breath to the edges of your body. Wiggle your fingers and your toes. Smile, wiggle your nose. With your inhale, stretch your whole body long. And with your exhale, curl into a ball and roll onto your side and just pause for a moment and feel this vitality and this vibrancy in you, even when you're still. And then help yourself up into a comfortable seated position. Allow your hands to meet at heart center. Let your elbows be heavy, pushing your palms together. Close your eyes and just think of the people in this moment together, even if they're not in the same room with you. And let's close with one final Om. Empty your breath. Take a deep inhale. Bring your prayer hands to your third eye. Invite the divine light. And as we bow forward together, we say, Namaste. And lots of love. Woo! Maybe slapping, making noise quietly if your kids are still asleep. Have a wonderful day. So nice to see your faces and your silhouette. Go out there and be awesome. I'll see you next week, perhaps. Same time, same place. Bye.